The morning mist curled around the metal domes of Kepler 472b when Marin Quill's world changed forever. Because standing just beyond the glass was a creature no one truly believed existed, an albino dragon with eyes like burning suns, and in her jaws, trembling and fading, was a dying hatchling she had crossed the wild alien forests to deliver. To him. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The morning on Kepler 472b began with a soft golden mist rolling across the metallic rooftops of the colony. The twin suns had not yet climbed above the fungal forest, and the world seemed to be holding its breath. Marin Quill, a quiet maintenance technician, stood inside the observation dome sipping lukewarm coffee. He liked these rare, silent minutes before the generators came fully awake and the colony corridors filled with voices. As he lifted the mug again, something pale moved outside the dome. His fingers froze. Then the mug slipped from his grip, hit the titanium floor, and shattered into scattered pieces. Marin's breath caught in his throat. Just beyond the glass stood a creature out of myth and cautionary files. A small dragon, her scales as pale as snow under starlight, watched him with eyes the color of molten and in her careful jaws, she held something small and trembling. Marin stepped closer to the glass, heart hammering. The thing she carried was a hatchling, no larger than a house cat, wrapped in pearl-white scales that barely moved with shallow breaths. Its tiny chest fluttered too fast. Its eyes were half closed. The story said albino dwarf dragons were the rarest living creatures on the planet. Most colonists spoke of them only around fire pits at night, calling them omens. See one, they said, and you would be blessed. Feed one, they whispered, and you would be cursed. Marin had never believed in curses, but now this mysterious dragon stood outside his observation dome, a living piece of this alien world, and he felt something deeper than fear. He felt the weight of a choice pressing down on him. Her ribs showed faintly through her pale scales, like the thin beams of an old ship's frame. Purple mud clung to her snout, and the torn, yet her gaze stayed fixed on him, steady and almost pleading. Marin glanced at the hatchling again. Its breaths came in tiny wisps of steam against the cold glass. Something in his chest tightened. The creature was fading. He knew the rules. Never open the airlock to unknown life. Never engage with native fauna without authorization. Never assume intent. Director Halden Croft repeated these lines so often they were carved into every colonist's mind. But rules could not stop the sound of the hatchling's faint, broken chirp. Marin stepped back from the glass and triggered his wrist communicator. "Quill to Dr. Mendez," he said, voice low but urgent. "Leora, I need you at Habitat 8 with your field kit, and please don't tell security yet." Static crackled. Then came Leora's sleepy voice. "Marin, it's barely dawn. What happened?" The dragon shifted her stance and gently bumped the airlock door with her snout. It was not an attack. It was more like a knock. Marin's mind raced. Security Chief Brant O'Neill would come armed, and he would shoot first if he felt threatened. The colony could not risk an incident. But this did not look like a threat. This looked like desperation. He whispered to himself, though the dragon could not hear him. "What do you want from me?" The dragon only watched, her orange eyes bright against the mist. The dome's motion sensor chirped as a hover sled appeared in the distance, cutting a thin line across the fog. Leora was coming fast. Merrin stood still, listening to the thud of his own pulse. The hatchling stirred weakly in the dragon's jaws. Outside, Kepler 472b's twin suns began to rise, throwing sharp beams of light into the mist. They caught on the dragon's scales, turning them into shards of quiet fire. She was not a shadow, or a danger file, or a whispered Storian. She was real, standing on this alien world with a life too small to survive alone. Merrin knew what the colony expected him to do, but he also knew what he could not ignore. He exhaled slowly, and everything inside him chose. And in that silent dome, with golden mist curling around the world, the first spark of a new story began to burn. Leora Mendez moved like calm water through a storm. She slipped through the inner airlock door of Habitat 8, her boots silent on the floor, her breath quick but steady. She had not asked Merrin many questions over the comm on her way here. She saved her words for moments that mattered, and this one mattered more than any moment he could remember. Merrin was kneeling near the outer airlock, cradling something wrapped in an emergency blanket. His face was pale under the soft glow of the dome lights. The blanket shifted slightly, and Leora caught her first. The mother dragon waited like a statue carved from frost. Her eyes glowed molten orange. Her tail moved in slow, controlled sweeps, each motion deliberate. The sight pressed the air out of Leora's chest, but her hands stayed sure. "Scanner," she said quietly. Merrin passed it to her without looking away from the hatchling. The device hummed as she ran it over the tiny body. The results flashed. She frowned, recalibrated, and scanned again. Severe dehydration, malnourished, and... She hesitated, then met Merrin's eyes. Hex toxin traces. This little one's been drinking poisoned water. Merrin felt the words settle in his bones like stones. "Can you save it?" "Maybe," she said. "If its system can tolerate the antidote, I'll start small." She prepared a thin injector, her hands steady as if she were repairing a delicate machine instead of touching alien life. The needle slid beneath the scale with a faint click. The hatchling outside. The mother lifted her head sharply, nostrils flaring. Her claws flexed against the soil. But she did not attack. She only watched. Then a new sound broke the tense silence. The distant buzz of hover sleds. Merrin's stomach dropped. "Security," he said. Leora's jaw tightened. "We're out of time." The comm line crackled, and the hard voice of Director Halden Croft filled the room. "Anomaly confirmed near Habitat 8. Security teams moving in. Report." Merrin looked at the pale mother dragon, at her steady, watchful gaze. "Not yet," he whispered. The sleds arrived with a hiss of brakes on metal soil. The first through the doorway was Chief Brant O'Neill, tall and sharp as wire, carrying an old projectile rifle. He took one look through the glass and snapped the weapon to his shoulder. "Step back from the dome, Quill," he barked through the external channel. She brought it here for help. We can fix this if we fix the water. Or she's testing our defenses, Brant shot back. Predators probe for weakness. Outside, the mother dragon spread her wings halfway, making herself a wall of pale light between the sleds and the dome. Steam curled from her nostrils in short bursts. The sight made the air hum like a live wire. Then the hatchling made a sound. It was small, thin, but stronger than before. The mother slowly lowered her wings. She lay down on the soil, stretched out her massive body, and pressed her head to the ground. Her soft throat was bare to every eye watching. Even Brant hesitated. Director Croft arrived moments later, tall and cold-eyed, his steps measured. He studied the scene, the fragile hatchling, the pale dragon lying still, the rifle aimed and shaking slightly. "Chief," Croft said, "lower hex contamination. I can stabilize this one, but there could be others in the wild. We need to trace the source fast." Croft considered in silence, then gave a single nod. "You have 1 hour. Mendez, Quill, assess and report. O'Neill, hold perimeter. Fire only if fired upon." His eyes cut to Marin. "Do not make me regret this." Marin nodded. Leora packed her field kit. Marin wrapped the hatchling gently, feeling a faint warmth returning to its body. Outside, the mother dragon rose to her feet. She turned toward the fungal forest, took a few steps, then stopped and looked back. Her eyes glowed softly in the mist. "She's asking us to follow," Leora whispered. Brant growled. "It's a trap." "Or it's trust," Marin said. He opened the airlock door. Mist curled in, cold and sweet with the scent. The forest greeted them with silence. Marin Quill stepped carefully behind the pale mother dragon as she led the way beneath towering fungal trees. The air smelled of wet stone and strange flowers. Glowing caps, high above, pulsed faint light in slow waves, painting the mist in purples and blues. The ground felt springy under his boots, like walking on the skin of some sleeping giant. Leora Mendez walked close beside him, her medical pack bumping softly against her hip. She kept glancing at the small creature in Marin's arms. The hatchling's eyes had opened a little, faint light showing behind the clouds, but its breathing was still shallow and too quick. "How far do you think she'll take us?" Marin asked quietly. "Far enough to matter," Leora said. They followed the dragon's pale shape as it slipped through the thick trunks with a grace that made her sighs. Marin thought of the colony behind them, the clean metal walls, the endless rules, and how distant it already felt. Out here on Kepler 472b, the world felt older than anything humans had made. After a long stretch of hushed walking, the forest opened. They stepped into a wide clearing, shaped like a shallow bowl. The floor was lined with shed dragon scales that glimmered faintly like scattered pearls. In the center lay 2 hatchlings curled together, both still and too thin. Leora rushed forward, kneeling in the soft soil. Her scanner hummed as she passed it over them. "Same signs," she said quickly. "Dehydration, malnourished, heavy toxin load, worse than the first one." The mother dragon made a low sound, deep and trembling. It was not anger, it was grief. Marin followed her gaze and saw a small stream running along the edge of the clearing. The water shimmered strangely, too dark, with a faint, oily sheen. "Leora," he said, Point hex contamination, she confirmed. This water is killing them. Marin looked upstream. Through the mist, he saw a slope covered in clusters of dark berries, almost black, their broken skins dripping into the flow. Landslide, he murmured. The berries fell in and poisoned the current. Leora pressed her lips tight. We can fix it if we get a terraforming unit here fast. Filtration beads, suction lines, maybe 2 days of work. Then we call it in, Marin said. He tapped his comm and sent a burst report to Director Halden Croft. Clear details. Clean plan. As they waited for a reply, shadows moved between the trees. Marin's breath caught. Shapes emerged from the mist. Dragons. Not one, but several, each thin and sharp-ribbed, each guiding or carrying hatchlings that wheezed faintly. The air grew still as the adults formed a loose ring around the clearing. Their eyes glowed in colors from amber to deep violet. Leora whispered, as Marin had quietly named her in his mind, stepped aside to let the others closer. There was no fight, no growl, only desperate quiet. Marin spoke softly into his comm. Director Croft, there are more, a lot more. Croft's reply came calm and clipped. Terraforming crew en route. Hold position. Within minutes, the forest filled with the hum of arriving hover sleds. The crew leapt out with gear and tense faces. They froze when the dragons moved. Instead of attacking, the dragons began to help. One with sky-blue scales pushed a fallen log out of the stream with her tail. Another dug a side trench with careful foreclaws to pull poisoned water away. Opal nudged heavy stones into place to anchor the filtration pipes. Every motion was controlled, deliberate, and strangely gentle. The crew stared. Marin just nodded. They understand, he said quietly. Leora worked fast, giving tiny doses of antidote to each hatchling, while speaking calm words in a steady tone. The sick little bodies began to stir, their breaths growing stronger. Opal crouched close, watching each motion of Leora's hands, as if memorizing them. Director Croft arrived as dusk gathered. He stepped from his sled and stood still, watching the scene, the dragons, the humans, the repaired stream slowly clearing to glass. This was never in the plans, Croft said. Neither was trust, Marin answered. The crew kept working through the night, dragons alongside them. When dawn slid under the canopy, the water ran clear. The hatchlings were sitting up, blinking, chirping softly. Opal let out a low, pleased sound, and for the first time since leaving the colony, Marin smiled without thinking. The forest had remembered how to breathe. The forest was quiet when the sun returned. Pale gold light slid through the towering fungal trees, turning the mist into drifting ribbons of fire. Marin Quill stood near the stream's edge, boots damp with dew, watching the hatchlings move. They were no longer silent and still. The three he and Leora had treated first now clambered over one another, small claws skittering on the soft ground. Their scales gleamed faintly, color returning like slow dawn. Nearby, Leora Mendez knelt, checking her scanner, the soft beeps rising and falling in steady rhythm. Around them, the dragons watched. There were 9 adults now, each one taller than a hover sled, their scaled bodies scarred by hunger and old battles. Yet their movements were calm. They stayed back from the humans, but not too far. Trust had grown in the space between their species, like a fragile new bridge. Director Halden Croft stood with his arms folded. His usual sharp tone softened. He watched a sky-blue dragon use her tail to guide water along the newly cleared channel. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "It already has," Leora replied. The terraforming crew worked through the day. The poison berries were cleared from the hillside. The stream ran clear again, and the last hatchling lay blinking weakly in Leora's lap. Opal, the pale mother who had led them here, stood close by, her glowing eyes never leaving her young. When Leora placed the hatchling on the ground, it let out a strong chirp. The sound rang like crystal through the clearing. Opal bent her head and nudged it gently, and the little creature pressed against her jaw in return. Marin let out the breath he had been holding for hours. More sleds arrived from the colony, carrying survey gear and small communication modules. "They already understand more than we think." She raised her hand slowly, palm outward. Opal watched, then mirrored the motion with the curve of her wing. The other dragons rumbled softly, a low rolling tone that vibrated in the ground. Marin felt it through his boots and in his ribs. The dragons began to hum together, long notes that rose and fell in strange patterns. The sound passed through the mist like a living thing. It was not words, but it was not mindless. It had shape, meaning. "They're talking to each other," Leora whispered. "They're talking to us," Marin said. For a long moment, everyone listened. The crew lowered their tools. The hover sleds idled silent. Even Croft stood still, eyes narrowed, not in suspicion, but in thought. Then Opal stepped closer to Marin. She lowered her massive head until her glowing eyes were level with his. Her breath smelled of ozone and rain. Marin stood very still. Opal made a soft thrumming sound. Then she lowered her, folding her legs beneath her and rolling onto her side, exposing her pale belly to him. The humans gasped. Marin slowly reached out, resting his palm on the smooth scales just behind her jaw. Her heartbeat pulsed beneath his hand, steady and strong. She trusted him. "She's offering alliance," Leora said softly. "She's offering peace," Marin said. Director Croft stepped forward at last. "Then we will answer," he said. In the days that followed, everything shifted. The dragons began visiting the colony, not as silent shadows, but as neighbors. They brought pieces of refined ore and guided survey teams to new freshwater springs. They warned of approaching storms before the colony's weather satellites caught them. Marin was placed in charge of a new division called Interspecies Relations. He spent his days drawing symbols in the dirt for the dragons to learn, while they etched their own with sharp claws in return. Opal became the bridge between their worlds, carrying, guiding groups, and sometimes simply resting beside the dome like a silent guardian. The colony changed. So did the people. Fear gave way to wonder, and suspicion gave way to care. One evening, as Kepler 472b's twin suns sank behind the horizon, the dragons gathered outside Habitat 8. They hummed together, long and low and rising, and the walls of the colony carried the sound like a living instrument. Humans stood on the walkways, listening in silence. And in that fading light, the two species, once strangers, sang to each other. It was not a song of fear. It was the chorus of two worlds, learning how to share the same sky.